Hey guys, welcome back to my channel for an all new episode recap of today's Days of Our Lives, July 22, 2025. So we started off with this scene because honestly, whenever Stephanie and Alex come on the episode, I honestly would rather watch paint dry because these two are just hard to watch. It's painful. I have to fast forward because honestly, there's nothing worth tuning into these people. They have zero chemistry. Alex is either overdoing it with his romantic, cheesy gestures, or, Stephanie is there being childish as usual. So it's like nothing worth tuning in. Stephanie's there prepared for a meeting with EJ, and she's just saying that she's doing it for the betterment of the hospital and for her mother without getting sucked into what EJ is all about on the surface. So also on the other side, Alex is trying to get her onto this novel and making sure that she goes to meet with I guess the book influencers, whoever is involved in marketing regarding novel. And she also tells him what she approves of or disapproves of, in terms of editing on the novel. And he assures her that everything is going to go through her before it goes to the full print and all of that, right? So at some point she leaves for the meeting and he gets a knock at the door because he was on the phone with Kate telling her what's going on with Stephanie and making sure that Stephanie has to feel like she's in control of the whole editing of the novel and everything. He gets a knock at the door. It's a package addressed to Stephanie. Stephanie comes back later on and he's surprised to see her back early. So she tells him that she accepted the offer from EJ and that she's just worried how it's going to affect her relationship with her mom. But, Alex says, don't worry, she will be fine with it. You're doing it for the greater good for the hospital. So she's surprised to see the package and he's like, do you have a secret admirer? So she's like, doesn't really know what's happening. But I wouldn't mind if it was a package addressed to her from Joy or Chloe, whatever, because they need some shaking up, honestly. So, anyways, Sarah and Javi, are talking about what happened to Holly and Ari, and they talk about whether they will have PTSD from what they went through. And, Sarah said it's a good thing that they have good family support. So they talk about, the kidnapping, Sarah can relate to because, her child was also kidnapped at a very young age, a few days old or a few months old. And it's a good thing she is not old enough to remember that she doesn't have to go through no trauma. So Javi, sorry about that. There's a talk about parenting on a general basis, and she talks about how he's very good with his foster baby, and he said that even though he's not the biological parent, he's very close with him and he's gonna feel bad when he has to give him up to adoptive parents. And she said she understands that feeling to give up a child that you love. And she remembers how she had to give up Mackenzie, and it was really rough on her. And that's when they were bonding over parenting, and that she misses her actual daughter. And now that her daughter is with her father, she's just missing her a lot more. So back to Sophia and Melinda. So they're getting this story straight about what they're going to tell Tate and her mom, right? So she's kind of still nervous because, again, she's worried about how Tate might feel, and that you know Tate didn't get to see his child before she passed it off or sent him to the firehouse. So Melinda said, it's sad, but at the end of the day, you did what you had to do, and don't worry about it. You did the right thing, and you did deliver this baby by yourself, so you should give a pat on your back for that. So she said, I'm surprised Tate is even calling back, considering he was at the lake trip with Holly and all of that. And I'm saying, girl, if only you know what really was happening with them. But anyways, they're going over the script, and she thanks Melinda yet again for helping her with this scheme. And she said, look, I've been there before. You don't have to thank me. Just, be calm and, be ready for what you need to do. So at some point she calls Tate because Tate has been blowing up her phone and he's worried. He doesn't know which hospital she delivered the baby at, or quote unquote delivered the baby at. So she calls him and says, "Look, I already have the baby. It's a girl." I guess this is their cover story because she's worried about whether or not somebody is going to picture the baby and think that the baby resembles her, because she's half Asian, and maybe the Asian features will come on as he gets older, and he's now with Javi and Leo, so maybe somebody will think, okay, Sophia is due anytime now. Maybe that baby happens to be hers, and she's worried about that. So Melinda already has it all figured out, because remember, Melinda is not new to this. She's true to this, right? She's not no novice lawyer, right? She knows how to scheme and plot with the best of them. So Tay comes home to Brady, and he's frantic because now, he doesn't know where, Sophia is, and he's telling his father that Sophia had the baby or she's in labor, and he needs to get to the hospital so he can see the baby and all that. So he's just worried. So he also tells him that, look, Holly and Ari were in an accident, they were kidnapped, and he had to be there. So Brady didn't know of any of this information, so he didn't really tell him the full story, because again, he's just itching to go find Sophia and see the baby and everything. So Brady's like, "You're really wired right now, let me drive you." So where did she say she had the baby? So he said he doesn't know. So he's like, Chicago is a big city, like, we'd be there a while trying to find out where she's. So he said, "I know that, but I just needed to see my baby," right? So he is there, and he's trying to calm down Tate. He's trying to get him to just, get at a relaxed level, because right now he's really hyped up, right? So he's just feeling bad because, he went to the lake trip with Holly, and then, Sophia needed him. And, Brady said, "Don't beat yourself up. Like, she's probably tried to, find out to Pierce, and she wanted to move forward in her life as you are." So he asked him, how's he feeling? Because honestly, you can tell that, part of Tate really wants to see this child and to really be a part of this child's life. He's a bundle of emotions now. He gets a phone call from Sophia. Sophia said that she had the baby and is quote unquote a daughter, and that she, will be coming home or coming to see him soon. So, he's surprised at that, and Brady's like, you have a daughter? I have a granddaughter. So he's like, not for long, So again, he's a bundle of emotions. He's sad, he's happy. He's always gonna worry about whether or not that child is gonna have a good full life, if the parents are gonna take care of her well. He's always gonna have that feeling. That's normal. He's allowed to have that feeling, right? But can I tell you how much I have grown to really love how Tate is growing these past couple of episodes? Kudos to him, right? But his world is gonna be crashing down when he finds out what's the reality behind this baby soon enough. So this scene was definitely the best, one of the best scenes of the day, honestly, to me, of the episode, with Kayla and EJ. So EJ comes in because Kayla was on the phone with Bo, checking in on him. And EJ comes in like, "You're on a personal call." And she said, "No, I actually was talking to my brother, seeing how he's recovering from that drug that was made at the hospital." So he said, again, like, he was the patient here and all of that. So she's like, "I would think that you'd be concerned about what's going on with the drug, since that's why you even got your grubby hands on the hospital." So he's like, "You're talking to me condescending and disrespectful. I own the hospital. I'm your boss." So she said, "You are not my superior. Like, at the end of the day, I'm chief of staff here. I answer to the board." So he's like, "Yeah, but I'm the one who owns the hospital, so you have to be kinder, respectful to me." So, they're going back and forth, trading barbs, and, he's telling her how, because of her actions, a lot of, losses have happened at the hospital, especially on the financial front. So she's like, saying, "Look, at the end of the day, it's not about the money for me. I'm here for the staff. I'm here for the patients, for the whole morale of the hospital. Like, your intention is not for that." So anyways, he said that he needs an office space for his meeting, and he's hinted at her office space, because she was saying, "Look, we don't have the office space. We're short staffed. Maybe you can, we can clean out a space in the utility closet, maybe close to the mark." So I definitely was rolling when she said that. So, he was laughing as well. And, he was being a jerk as usual. And she was getting irritated. So she said, "You know what?" She puts her badge down and she said, "Look, Like, it's either you're going to give me full autonomy, or you're going to give me some respect, or I'm just going to quit. So he's like, really, you're going to leave and walk away? So she said, look, I put in a lot of work and years over the time being here. Like, I can leave, right? So, at some point he said, give me the office space. I don't think he said yes or no to her suggestions or requests, but it was definitely funny. So, anyways, Javi comes home from work because Leo is there, and he's talking on the phone, to chat again about doing civic duty, whining and complaining again. And, Javi comes home to, just ask him about what's going um, on the home front. And, Leo asked him what's going on with Ari. So he said that, she's okay. Gabby hasn't leave her side. So he asked about Doug as well. And he said that, Rafe said Doug left after, the police station and everything. So he asked Leo up front, like, look, you were helping Doug to, get somebody to give to the loan shark. Did you know that he was involved with Ari at any time? So he said no. Like, had I known, I would have told you directly, right? So anyways, he said, you believe me, right? So he said, yeah. And he said, look, like, why would you even help this guy? So he said, look, I've been there before. And, had I gotten somebody to help me, like what John and Marlena did, maybe I would have turned out better. So, Javi understands that he believes him. And he said, look, you don't have to continue to convince me. I trust you. So he said, look, like, you have changed me for the better. I'm not doing this scheming anymore. I'm just, on the straight and narrow, and I thank you for that, right? So I don't want to give you any reasons to question me or anything like that. So, anyways, he leaves off for a second, and, Avi is there. At some point, Leo runs into EJ, and he comes home and he tells Javi that, look, EJ's trying to bribe me and everything. So we'll get into that at some point in the episode. So Sarah was on the phone blasting Xander and saying that, look, you can't do this and you need to go to hell. So she's out in the middle of the waiting area for the hospital. And I'm saying, you couldn't take this to a private room or something. This is so unprofessional. And she said that when Kayla come over, and Kayla's like, what's going on? So Kayla said, are you kidding me? Like, this is your daughter. You're allowed to, express yourself this way. And I'm saying, Kayla, as chief of staff, no. Sarah, as a doctor, as somebody that's doing medicine there, she should have taken her personal business outside of the hospital or in a private room. She shouldn't be doing that in front of no patients or in front of the hospital waiting area where other co-workers are. That's tacky and very unprofessional. You should have called her out on that. But at the end of the day, it's just it's a friendly thing with these people, and that is why the hospital is suffering now, because of these kind of things. But anyways, outside of my rant, right? So she tells Kayla what's going on, and that Xander is preventing her from seeing her daughter, and he's been very difficult, and it's been hard. And Kayla's sorry about that. Kayla said, sometimes I wonder if I voted for the right person. Xander probably is the lesser two evils. He has his ways, but he's no EJ. And she tells her about what EJ is doing, that he wants her office space, and that he's scolding her for the budget cuts and everything, and that she's not doing a good job. So Zira is very sad to hear that. And they still talk about her and Victoria, and Kayla's there in any way to help her get through this. And she said she's fine. She's gonna find a way how to deal with Xander. At some point, after Kayla went to the office to see Stephanie and EJ and what happened there, she comes back furious, and she tells Sarah what's going on. And Sarah's surprised to hear that. And she also talked about Xander some more and said that, look, maybe Xander needs to go to a psychiatrist, talk more about his rage, not couples therapy, but more personal therapy. Talk more about the rage and why he acts this way. Maybe can help them to have a better co-parenting situation. And I agree with that, because honestly, it's all in the good for Victoria if they really go through those kind of mediums, right? So anyways, the moment I was telling you about was earlier when she walked in on Stephanie and EJ, and they're shaking hands. At this point, Stephanie agrees to work for EJ, and Kayla is just angry at that because she doesn't want EJ to have any kind of interaction with her daughter, right? So before that, Stephanie said, look, I'll work for you, but there's two terms, like I am not going to undermine my mother in any type of way, and EJ doesn't want that, and she said, I'm not going to do nothing illegal, illicit, lying, cheating, stealing. So he's like, I don't expect you to do that, right? I just want us to work smoothly and for the betterment of the hospital. So she's all on board. And Kayla tell her, you look, I told you not to, shake hands with this guy or to work with him. And Stephanie said, yeah, but I decided to. And Kayla had a moment with EJ and said, look, like, I don't want you nowhere working with my daughter. So he's like, look, like, at the end of the day, like, your daughter, she has the great expertise to bring this hospital around. And she's like, said, look, not all the expertise in the world to make you look like an honorary person or whatever it is. So he said, look, that's it for today. So he leaves, right? So again, like, look, Stephanie's a grown woman. She can do what she wants and choose who she want to work with, right? You have to just know it's just business at the end of the day. So also remember I was saying something about Leo and EJ's interaction. So Leo didn't want to have anything to do with him because remember he is a juror, right? He's on civic duty. So it would be very unprofessional, unethical for him to be meeting with one of the prosecutors or the attorneys on the case. So he said, look, what's your catch? How much do you need? So he's like, look, I don't do that anymore. So he's like, you're always, once a drifter, always a drifter. You don't change your spots like a leopard doesn't. So he said, like, look, I'm not that person anymore and I don't want what you're offering, right? So good for Leo. I am happy for him for turning a new leaf. If we're talking about character development, Leo is definitely one of them. So anyways, Tate and Brady, they're talking, and Tate gets a knock at the door and he's surprised to see Sophia already there um so early. So she said that, I'm here, and he's saying like, where's the baby? So she said the baby's not here anymore. So that was where it ended. But boy, this story, I don't know if Melinda think this is gonna all work swimmingly, but wait till Mrs. Choi finds out what's going on, because if Tate doesn't ask the relevant questions, she is going to badger her daughter till, the truth is revealed. And for all we know, Tate is not the biological father. So let's see what's gonna happen. So that is it, guys. Don't forget to like, follow, subscribe to my channel. I will see you guys tomorrow.